joining me today, and welcome to my sewing room. We have an exciting technique for you today. It is called a little bit of an unusual name, round portrait collar. What is a round portrait collar, and where did the name come from? Actually, the first blouse I'm going to show you features what I call a round portrait collar. The puffing goes around in a circle, the laces go around in a circle, even the fabric joining the neckline goes around in a circle. Now, where did this type of collar get the name round portrait collar? Well, many times this type of collar is used for having that special portrait painted or photographed. This particular lady's blouse is another version of a round portrait collar. The details are very similar, but yet they're different. The puffing goes around in a circle, so does the lace go around in a circle, and in this case, the top treatment features embroidery and laces which run up and down. I think it's a very interesting variation on the round portrait collar. This next perfectly exquisite baptismal gown, christening dress, blessing dress, or baby dedication dress, this type of gown is used for all of these occasions, features a maybe sort of kind of round portrait collar. Actually, there is not a collar at all. It is a round neckline. You see the laces come around in a round shape. Then there's a lovely curved lace here. The laces travel all the way down this elegant skirt. The pin tucks travel all the way down the elegant skirt. And then the bottom of this skirt is perfectly exquisite. It has shaped laces, laces that miter around, and an absolutely beautiful ruffle on the bottom of this christening dress. Once again, it has a round neckline. I have a different version of that same christening dress, a little bit more roundness in this particular yoke. The laces travel around, the pin tucks travel around, the entredot travels around, giving the effect of a round portrait collar, but actually the stitching is built into the neckline rather than onto a collar. And then traveling down into the skirt, more beautiful pin tucks, lace shaping, and other elegant treatments. This particular lady's suit is a very tailored jacket. It has a collar which is very similar to a round portrait collar. It is stitched like a round portrait collar, but it is a little bit different look for a round portrait collar. Very elegant for a tailored lady's outfit. This particular blouse, the last one I'm going to show you today, is the traditional round portrait collar blouse. The puffing, the laces, the beading, this is beautiful on any age lady. It is perfectly elegant worn by itself. It is also very pretty worn with a jean skirt or a pair of jeans pulled out, and this worn on top of a crew neck sweater pulled out on top. It's very easy to do round portrait collars. It was the first lace shaping I ever did. I would like to take you over to the technique boards and share how easy making a round lace portrait collar is. Have you ever tried to sew on paper? Well, that is the basic principle of making a lace portrait collar. I am shaping the round laces on a piece of tissue paper, or in this case, just a piece of typing paper. I draw off the center neckline and the two center back lines, shaping by sticking pins into the board. I shape the large side of the lace, stick pins all the way around the large side of the lace. Then, do you remember those little pull threads in the lace? Well, after sticking the pins in, I come up here and I find, let me see if I can show that to you right there. There's the pull thread in the heading of the lace. I find the pull thread and look here what happens. I'm going to pull it, and just like magic, I'll pull the other side now. Let me find the other side just to finish up getting this lace shaped nice and evenly. You see, I pull those threads and my lace portrait collar lay down just like magic. Now, I will do the same with each row going on around, and then I will remove the pins, pin it flat, and zigzag right through the tissue paper. Remember, it isn't attached to a dress at this point. It is a freestanding collar. This particular illustration shows that the lace, and by the way, I've stitched it in black so you can see it more easily, and this has all of the different layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, have already been stitched together. They've been pressed flat. This is what the finished collar looks like. Now, demonstrating how I put the gathered lace around the edge of this portrait collar, I simply once again pull the string, butt it up to the finished collar, and zigzag. I have another trick for you. If you would like your collar to have the wing needlework in between every row of lace, so I'd like to show you on the quilt square another neat trick for making a lace portrait collar. We might lovingly call this quilt square quilting in a circle or lace in a circle. I have taken the lace pieces and completely circled them to make a very interesting quilt square. There's something else very interesting I'd like to show you. Now this is the traditional round portrait collar. This is my trick for the day. Do you see that I have entre-deux stitching in between every 2 rows? Rule number 1, I cannot do entre-deux stitching on the sewing machine just through tissue paper, because when I pull the tissue paper away, the entre-deux stitching will come away too. I have to use fabric underneath entre-deux stitching in order for it to look like this. And then you might say, well, Martha, I thought you said that you make a round portrait collar on tissue paper. Well, that's right, you can, if you zigzag the lace rows together. But if you want entre-deux in between every row, once again, let's look at this. Do you want entre-deux in between every row? If that is the case, here is my trick I'm going to show you on the quilt square right now. You can have entre-deux in between every row, but instead of using tissue paper, as I had told you earlier we would do, you simply use fabric underneath. Remember, you have to have fabric in order to do entre-deux stitching and have it not all fall out. You have to have some fabric. So on the quilt square, I have my wing needle in, and I'm ready for my entre-deux stitch, which goes back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. Of course, remember to take the pins out. And I sew as straight as I can sew with the wing needle entre-deux stitch and still go in the circle. Now that isn't crazy, you'll just have to figure out how I'm doing this, okay? Now then, I'm stitching through the fabric rather than tissue paper because I'm using the entre-deux stitch. I'm stitching through the fabric and through my stabilizer. I have to have stabilizer anytime I do the wing needle entre-deux stitch also. Now I'm stitching as straight as I can stitch. I will go all the way around. Then after my wing needle entre-deux stitch is finished, at that point I will cut away the fabric from behind each row of lace, and there my entre-deux stitch will be in between each row. And I travel all the way around. I think I'm going to show you this right now, how beautiful this is. Let me pull it over here where it will have some dark underneath it. This is the wing needle entre-deux stitch in between every row of a round lace portrait collar. And after I stitch this is row number 1, then I'll stitch row number 2. After stitching row number 2, and only after that time, will I go to the back and cut away the fabric that is behind here. So there are 2 ways now of doing the round portrait collar. One is to stitch it through tissue paper, and there you do use the tissue paper is your stabilizer there, and you must use a zigzag stitch. The second way of doing the round lace portrait collar is to stitch every row together with your wing needle entre-deux stitch built in your sewing machine, and that's a little bit different. Remember, you must put fabric behind the laces as well as the stabilizer, and then to make it peekaboo, let me pull this one over one more time and see what this collar or that quilt square will look like when it's finished. In order to make it peekaboo, this one was stitched, by the way, on a piece of fabric. And in order to make it peekaboo, after doing all of the rows of entre-deux stitching one after the other, I carefully trim the fabric from behind the rows of lace. And that is my second trick for doing the wing needle entre-deux collar. I have another illustration over here. If you will walk with me over to the teaching boards to give you just one more little quick look at exactly how this is done. This is a traditional type pattern. This says size 10, here's the fold, 3/8 inch seam around the neckline, 1/4 inch seam on the back. Traditionally, the patterns look like this. Now, if I'm going to use that particular pattern, which is just half a pattern, right over here, I will trace it with some black ink through some very thin paper. So when I open it up, I will have my whole pattern already on the pattern piece. Okay, then I can do this. I can come over to my fabric. If I'm going to be stitching through the fabric, dot off. Can you see those dots? Rather than drawing a straight line, it seems to me to be easier just to put dots on your fabric all the way around. I dot off the center neckline, the 2 center back lines, and then I begin to pin and pull and take the pins out of the board, pin it flat. I'm using fabric behind this collar because I intend to do a wing needle entredot stitch to join these laces. Now, what if I want to attach this collar into the neckline of a blouse, not make it detachable? I can do several things, but one of my favorite ways of finishing the neckline is simply to clip some entredot. You see how it's in a curve, so I have to make some little clips along my entredot and put entredot on the neckline edge, leaving a seam allowance. The last trick I would like to show you, which I think is a really neat one also, I have stitched a round portrait collar on a lady's blouse to be worn under a suit. In order to make this less bulky under the suit, I only stitched the round portrait. You see, there is no round portrait collar in the back. I simply stitched the round portrait collar in the front, attached it to the neckline, and this makes it very, very easy to wear under a suit because there is no bulk. This particular blouse, which has a very simple sleeve, a plain front, is a real basic pattern to use for almost any type of heirloom sewing. This half portrait collar is truly a lovely way to make a portrait collar without too much stuff. Let me show you the way this is finished in the back. It simply has a little placket, a very tailored back, very, very easy to sew, and I'll tell you a little secret. I am into easy to sew. Our schedules today, yours and mine and literally everyone I know, we are so busy that easy to sew is getting more and more valuable in my life, and I would be willing to bet more and more valuable in yours also. Refresh with me one more time. Trace the pattern, or rather cut the pattern, trace it out. If you're going to sew with the wing needle entredot stitch, you must put it on a fabric. You must do your lace shaping on fabric. You will need stabilizer underneath any type of wing needle work. This is if you're going to put it on fabric. Now look over here. Let me crinkle this just a little bit. If you're going to just zigzag your collar together, you can stitch on tissue paper. This is simply tissue paper, not fabric. Now remember, when you stitch on tissue paper, it has to be just a plain zigzag, not wing needle entredot. And in most cases, your piece of tissue paper will be enough for your stabilizer. However, it doesn't hurt to put another piece of stabilizer, the tear-off kind, behind it if you want to. The round circle lace portrait collar is not only beautiful on clothing, it is especially beautiful on items for your home. And next we have a home decorating idea for you using this lovely round lace portrait collar technique. I cannot imagine a more elegant gift for yourself or for someone that is really special to you than this lovely, lovely pillow for someone's bedroom, sun porch, or even done in darker colors of a tie silk or some kinds of drapery fabric that would also be beautiful for a living room. This particular pillow has round lace, in this case 3 rows of round lace, zigzagged right down to the round pillow. Of course, the very most beautiful part of this pillow, and let me get a pin here to point it out, is the beautiful hand-done silk ribbon embroidery. I have shades of lavender and pink and green and pale tan and yellow and peach. Oh, what a beautiful array of colors. The little roses, more little roses with tiny little seed pearls, ribbon rosettes, all kinds of leaves. Now, the question is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? The question in this pillow would be, which comes first? The lace shaping, which is this round lace right here, or the silk ribbon embroidery? And the answer is either one that you would like to come first. Our silk ribbon embroidery specialist, Kathy Brower, suggests the silk ribbon might come first after you trace off where it will be exactly, because as she says, Martha, if you mess up a little bit, then you can always start over. But you know what? On silk ribbon, you're not going to mess up because it is so easy. This lovely pillow is very easy to make. I would like to illustrate one more point. Now, I have pinned the pins on the outside of the silk ribbon. I have my iron here to once again show you why it is very critical to use glass head pins. After I pin the pins where they're kind of laying down, taking a nap, I put the iron down, I give it a shot of steam. I come over here, I put it down, give it a shot of steam. Put it right here and give it a shot of steam anytime I'm shaping laces. Now, I do not come in here and, swipe the iron here and swipe it here. I simply come in, a shot of steam, then it is shaped. Then I remove the pins, such as these pins right over here, and then I'm ready to do my sewing. I even have a little doll who has a round lace portrait collar. She's very lovely, and she would like to meet you. My little friend is very happy to meet you. She is looking all beautiful in her turquoise tie silk dress, her lovely ecru round portrait collar, and her little entredot and gathered lace finish around the neckline, little gathered lace around her portrait collar. Her little skirt, well, it looks as if she has on a petticoat, but this is the real secret for today's sewing technique for dolls. This is not a petticoat peeking out here. It's a little fake petticoat. Actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of lace stitched underneath her hem, and that is my doll dressing technique for you today. Over here, I have 4 pieces of edging. Now, you're going to say, now, wait a minute, Martha, I thought when you were going to butt 3 pieces of lace like that together, it needed to be insertion. No, it does not. 4 pieces of edging will be just fine. Here's how you do it. You bring 1 piece of edging overlap it over the heading of the next piece, zigzag it together. Do the same thing for the next piece, zigzag it together. Same thing for the next piece, zigzag it together. And I've done this in purple threads so it will be really easy to see. This is how I made the little kind of fake petticoat that sticks out from underneath the little doll's hem. Do you remember how I gather this? After I stitch all of it together, I have the gathering thread that's in the top row. I pull the gathering thread, and guess what? It gathers my lace ruffle just as sweet as can be. Now, let's move on to the skirt. First of all, I'm going to serge the hem of the skirt. That's the easiest way to finish it. Then I press in the hem. That's about a 2-inch hem. I press it in all the way across. Okay, now after I've pressed in the hem, I open up the whole skirt again. Remember my gathered petticoat to go underneath it that isn't really a petticoat? Okay, using the Martha's Magic technique, I gather my petticoat in like this, leaving about 1/4 of an inch to 1/16 of an inch, yes, and that's with the gathered lace. And then I zigzag or serge, rolling the edge of this hem into the edge of the gathered lace. All right, that's the technique. Let me move down here a little bit and show you. This purple stitching right here shows where I zigzagged the edge of the hem onto the gathered lace. Now I have something that looks like this. I have my hem line, I have the gathered lace gathered onto the bottom, and then here's what I do at that point. Fold it up, simply go back to the back using the blind hemmer, hem the little skirt, and that is what it looks like. Do you see how pretty that is? It peeks out from underneath the little hem. A very special craft idea I have for you today, an elegant silk ribbon embroidered trimmed jewelry bag. This little tie silk jewelry bag is very easy to make, and by the way, it has sweet little lazy daisies and pearls done in silk ribbon. This is not just an ordinary jewelry pouch. If we open it up on the inside, I think you can see there are little places in there to put your earrings, rings, or whatever you would like to tuck away. Very easy to make, although it's a very impressive gift item and so handy for you to take on trips also. Start out with 2 circles of fabric, mark off the center, 2 little buttonholes in the top layer only. Then this circle of fabric, which will be the part for the little, to hold your little earrings, simply scallop stitch all the way around the edge. This is also 2 layers. To make the little jewelry, let me turn it over back to the back now. To have something to make the little jewelry bag stiff on the bottom, I've used the top of either a coffee can or a margarine tub. This is plastic. I cut a circle out, put it down right on the line I've drawn in the center of the back, then bring my little circle I just made with the scallops and put it right on top of there, using a zipper foot, stitch all the way around that little plastic margarine tub or coffee can. Then I have folded this area. I stitch all the way out through all the layers, all the way out, all the way out, all the way out. Earlier, before I came back and did all this razzmatazz on the back, got my little coffee can in there, I stitched the laces down, pin them, sticking the pins in the board, spray, starch, and press, zigzag the insertion, zigzag the edging on the edge. And by the way, this piece of insertion makes the casing to run by the way, this area in here with 2 layers makes the casing to run the ribbon through. That's how easy it is to make this sweet little jewelry bag all ready to tuck my earrings in or your earrings, and I'm ready to travel. I love to collect antique clothes. Let's take a trip to my attic and I'll share some of these treasures with you. Round yokes have always been a popular fashion for women's blouses. This particular blouse, which has the pigeon-breasted look in the front, very Gibson girl looking, with the lovely tucks that come down the front. So pretty, plain little puff sleeves. This has a round yoke which is made of something which actually I would call it almost curtain material. It's a netting, kind of a coarse netting. Then there is a lovely faggoting that comes around the round yoke, and there's a little bit of beading at the top and gathered lace at the neckline. This would be a very easy blouse to recreate for today's woman also, using the lovely round yoke. And you could even use a netting which was somewhat similar to this netting on the front of this blouse. Sewing from the heart is really what I call a term for women doing volunteer work at their sewing machines. This is a trend all over this great world. Women who are so fortunate to have a sewing machine, sewing for either families in need, those less fortunate, or to raise money for the arts in their communities. I have a letter here from Marty Giebert of San Antonio, Texas. Marty writes, San Antonio's Alamo chapter of the Smocking Arts Guild of America smocks dozens of bonnets each year for an organization called Any Baby Can Incorporated. Any Baby Can, that's ABC, is a nonprofit agency for families of children with chronic illnesses or disabilities. This agency provides information and access to community resources, counseling, and other support services. Caseworkers distribute the bonnets to the children who would like to have one or who need one. Alamo chapter members of Smocking Arts Guild of America also are creating custom smocked and French hand-sewn wardrobes for 2 well-known dolls for a fall fundraising raffle. Marty, thank you so much for sharing the San Antonio's Smocking Arts Guild project. It's exciting to hear from you, and thank you for your volunteer work. Thank you for joining me today in my sewing room, and I'll see you next time.